Okay, I would like to call to order the January 8th regular meeting of the Central Oregon Community College Board of Directors. So I'd like to start with our native lands acknowledgement. Do you have a copy?
I'll be happy to get it.
That would be great. If everyone would bear with us for just a moment, please.
You know, you probably could just say it, you know, would be fine.
I want to make sure it's right.
Actually, I do have a video version, but I think it's like 3 minutes long, so, yeah.
I think did we? Oh, anyway. Oh, yeah, we watched it at the retreat. It's really good.
Yeah.
Does anybody have any objection if we just use that? Let's just use that. Please go ahead. It's really good.
I don't know.
I think Laura's coming back, so.
Oh, is she coming back?
I think she said she has a French version.
I'm sorry, I looked at my.
Always take your phone with you for our security feature,
Oh, no.
duo,
Lucas,
factor
wanna try
authentic,
the
what is it
video
called?
version? Yeah.
Do you have, Kyle, do you have the one that the video one? Could we just do it?
I think it's on our website.
I can do it.
I think we know it. Yeah, sorry about that.
No worries.
First listening to what they're about.
First time I forgot.
Started drinking warm water to help me lose weight.
I think Kyle, so you, did he mention that? Okay. With the page. I've been doing it wrong all along.
Central Oregon Community College would like to acknowledge that the beautiful land our campuses reside on are the original homelands of the Taipon, Wampum, Tenayapon, and Tokshpakpom, known as the Millipom or Warm Springs people, and the Wasco people. The tribes ceded 10 million acres of this land to the U.S. government in the Treaty of Middle Oregon of 1855, while retaining regular and customary fishing, hunting, and gathering rights. As a result of this treaty, their remaining 578,000 acres were used to create the Warm Springs Indian Reservation.
In 1879, a small group of Numu or Paiute people were placed on the Warm Springs Reservation by the United States government. In the years following, more Numu people were forcibly moved to the Warm Springs Indian Reservation. It wasn't until 1937, in conjunction with the Indian Reorganization Act, that the 3 distinct tribes became known as the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs. It is also important to note that the Klamath Trail ran north through this region to the Great Saliva Falls trading ground. Descendants of these original peoples are thriving members of our community today. We acknowledge and thank the original stewardship of this land.
The COCC land acknowledgement is a living document and may change over time as we continue to learn more. It was developed in collaboration by enrolled members of the Confederated Tribes of Warm Springs, enrolled members of the Klamath tribes, and folks here at the college. While land acknowledgements share true history, they are meant to be more than words. Acknowledgement itself is a small gesture. It is more meaningful when it is coupled with building relationships and taking action. If you scan the QR code on the screen, it will take you to the COCC Native American Program webpage, where you will find examples of how you can get involved. We would like to thank our friends at the Environmental Center for curating this list. You can also find this list by going directly to the Native American Program webpage listed on the screen.
Thank you, Kyle. I think we should be really proud of that video and those who put it together, so thank you. May we have a roll call, please?
Laura Prescott Cooper.
Here.
Erica Scappold online.
Here.
Joe Krinovitz.
Yes.
Alan Unger.
Here.
Aaron Mers.
Here.
Aaron Cook Morgan.
Here.
Jim Porter.
Present.
Lori Chesley.
Here.
Zach Boone. Here. Laura Boney.
Here.
Anne Marie Hemlin.
Here.
Michael DeLon. Here. Tyler Hayes. Here. Brianna Sylvester.
Here.
And Mark Remke. Here. Kyle Matthews.
Here.
And Kathleen Knudsen. She here. Charlotte Gilbert.
Here.
Christy Walker.
Here.
And Lucas Albert here.
Thank you, Lucas. I'd like to thank Mark for joining us while Paul recovers. It was nice. I've talked to him a couple times via text and it sounds like he's doing pretty well so far.
He
So,
was doing well. Thank you.
do we have any agenda changes that anyone would like to request? Okay, noting none. Do we have any public comment?
No public comment.
Okay, no public comment. So we'll move to the consent agenda. Has everyone had an opportunity to review the minutes? If so, do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
Move approval.
Second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please indicate by saying no. Noting none, motion carries unanimously. So that brings us to information items, and we start with the monthly budget status. Does everyone have a chance to review? Anyone have any questions for Michael? Nope. I know you were hoping for some.
I was.
Anything you wanted to tell us? Besides what was in there?
Usually we present the audit at this time of the year, but the audit, budget and finance committee couldn't meet until tomorrow, so we're going to address that at the February meeting.
Fabulous. Thank you. All right, new hires report. Anyone have any questions for Laura? Noting none, I believe we have a presentation. Alicia, this is yours, right? Title IX update?
Yeah.
Well, I wanted to share with you a little bit of update around Title IX and sexual harassment. You're going to learn some differences between those two terms, but I'm going to tend to use those interchangeably, right? Federal law refers to Title IX, sexual harassment tends to refer to Oregon, and sexual harassment is also an umbrella phrase for a bunch of different categories of things, very technical that we'll talk about. But please chime in anywhere along the way if you have any questions. Can you see if I'm standing? Okay. So the first piece we want to do is give you an overview of what Title IX means, what those definitions are, what our reporting process and investigation process looks like, and the resources we share with students and employees if they're a part of the Title IX incident. We're going to talk about something called pregnancy-related conditions, which is a new requirement that came out under the Biden administration. And some contact information and the different people that are here to support students throughout. And then we have some miscellaneous topics that can wrap around this entire topic. So first and foremost, Title IX defined is a federal law that prohibits gender discrimination of any kind on a college campus or in settings that are controlled by a college or a university, right? And looks at gender discrimination very broadly, looking at gender stereotypes, gender characteristics, pregnancy or related conditions, sexual orientation, and gender identity. It also includes sexual harassment, sexual assault, dating violence, domestic violence, and stalking, right? And that second paragraph, sexual harassment, sexual assault, dating or domestic violence and stalking, is what Title IX is really grown into in the last, I would say, last 20 years or so. For those of you who remember, who were around in the mid 80s, early 80s type of thing, Title IX originated as gender equity in college sports. And over time, it's expanded to not only include gender equity in all different activities and all different employment areas, but it also includes anything around sexual harassment, sexual assault, dating or domestic violence and stalking. The reason I'm here to talk with you about that today is that I am the college's Title IX coordinator. We've got a team of folks, and you'll hear about them throughout that process, who help with this process. But my role is to make sure that we are adhering to, as a coordinator, adhering to those federal regulations and providing the appropriate supports for our students and employees. So let's go over this piece just a little bit. A lot of this is things you know from having been in the professional world for quite some time, but sexual harassment is really anything that looks at unwelcome conduct of a sexual nature, and this is key, at a federal level that is so offensive and severe or pervasive that it limits a person's ability to be an employee or their ability to engage as a student, right? And that language of and or is really critical. Under Obama's administration was one thing, under Trump's administration was something else. Biden this last summer changed it. And the message here is every president in the last 6 or so presidencies has changed something substantial around Title IX. We anticipate that what I'm sharing with you today will also change a little bit under the Trump administration sometime in the next year to 2. So our definition, at least at a federal level, is offensive and severe or pervasive. In Oregon, and this is where it starts to get a little complicated, it's an or statement on any of these. It can be offensive or severe or pervasive, right? And that's part of my job as a Title IX coordinator, is to suss that out and figure out, do we have to follow the very restrictive federal policies around Title IX, or can we follow the state and we mirror state of Oregon's policies as an internal? So we have 2 options for students, predominantly if they ever go through a Title IX incident. When I say predominantly, we've had 1 or 2 employee incidences in the 20+ years that I've done this work for the college. Some important notes about that. Digital abuse, right, in this day and age, a lot of that type of behavior can occur in any type of social media, any type of digital interactions, cell phone, whatever the case may be. That is equally as inappropriate in a college setting as it would be if it was in a person-to-person type of interaction. Third-party harassment is also prohibited. And this is when I ask my buddy to retaliate against you or engage in harassment on my behalf. And this is where it gets a little sticky on state versus federal law, but either way, under Title IX, again, the federal law, it applies to any COCC event that is in this COCC controlled activity or physical location, right? So you take a group of students on a field trip. You might be, if you're at a university and you have off-campus housing that you manage, something along those lines. It can apply to an on-campus setting if it comes back and creates a hostile environment on the campus. So if something happens between 2 students at a party off campus or in a dating relationship off campus, COCC has nothing to do with where that interaction occurred, but it's unreasonable and it interferes with that person's ability to be a student here, then we do have a legal responsibility to follow through and address that situation with those students. If someone's not a student, our ability to respond is significantly, our answers can be high in that regard. The biggest piece when we do this iteration or different iteration of this training, but close to this, is we always impart to everybody that it's all of our jobs, that we can't do anything, we can't support those who've been victims of a Title IX incident unless unless it's reported. So if you're talking with people, if you're witnessing something, if you overhear about a situation, we always require all employees and encourage all students to make sure to tell someone. And we'll talk about what those reporting mechanisms are in just a bit. Any questions so far? So when it comes to the reporting process, lots of different avenues for this to happen. People can come directly to me as the Title IX coordinator. We have a deputy coordinator, which I think has a little bit better title than coordinator. I like the word deputy in there, but and that person works in our office and student residence life, doing a lot of our student contact and student care outreach, right? So the natural fit for that position. Through Andrew's office, through the Office of Student Life, Campus Safety, Laura and Human Resources, and then we have a college incident reporting system. And the biggest piece I share with people when we talk about people using our incident reporting system, whether it's for a Title IX or sexual harassment issue, a policy violation, a slip and fall, whatever the case is, that system screens whatever that is based on the type of report it is. We choose which of those areas it fits, and then routes it to the appropriate people. So it's not broadcast to everybody who has access to our incident reporting system, right? So in the case of Title IX, the only people that are informed about that are Laura, Andrew, myself, and Campus Safety. And actually just the director of Campus Safety. So that's a small group of people. My responsibility as the Title IX coordinator, or our deputy coordinator's responsibility, is to coordinate the process. And the key piece here is to coordinate the process for both the reporting party and the responding party. And I use that language federally. It's actually called complainant and responding party. Someone might say complainant or victim or reporting party, but the accused is called the responding party. So you'll hear me use that language. But at a federal level, under Title IX, it's called complainant. In Oregon, it's called reporting party. Again, most important part, we can't do anything about it. We can't support people unless we're notified about it. The other piece, as the Title IX coordinator, our job is to talk with the person who is the receiver of that incident, or who's the, on the front end of that incident, to talk to them about our investigation options. We have both formal and informal processes, and they vary state or federal, and I help sort through that. We talk about confidentiality, right? And letting the person know that really it's up to that individual and what steps they want to go forward with an investigation, what level of confidentiality they want, because this is all about us giving power back to that person who might have had that power taken away if you are the recipient of any of those types of issues: gender discrimination, sexual harassment, sexual assault, dating violence, or domestic violence, or stalking, right? That's all about someone's power being taken away, and our job is to give that back to that student. We share local and national resources, and then at the same time, my job is also there to support the responding party and making sure they understand their rights and their processes, and we'll talk about those. Some of those will be scattered throughout this as well. One of the things I want to point out on the local resources, we're currently in a conversation with Saving Grace to enter into a partnership with them. The Oregon legislature session and a half, 2 sessions ago, put forth a requirement that all colleges and universities either hire a victims advocate or partner, if you're small enough or have a few enough incidents like we do, that you can partner with local domestic violence agency, provide those resources on campus. And so they will hold office hours on our campus, and they'll be there to help support the victim should that person need, both with our process and any process they might want to pursue through local authorities. So when it comes down to, once we've gone through that piece, once the reporting party has given me direction on what avenue they might want to pursue, and they can always change their mind at any point to stop the process, we go through our investigation process. One of the things we talk with folks about when it comes to our investigation is that it's directed by them, and legally, and I hate having to say this piece to folks, but legally I'm required to tell them if they choose to limit how much, if they want higher levels of confidentiality, that will limit our ability to respond adequately in that investigation. So it's one of those things. I apologize profusely for having to say that, but legally, under the federal laws, we are required to do that. We then go into investigation options, and I'm not going to go into detail on all of these because it varies depending on the situation, formal versus informal. Tyler Hayes, our Dean of Enrollment Management, has been our lead investigator on this for 8-10 years, something along those lines, and has been a great resource for students in this process. The investigator's role in that is to simply collect the facts. They meet with the person who is the recipient of the incident. They meet with the responding party. They meet with any witnesses. They collect any evidence, and they write that up in a formal report that's deeply structured, and that's given to me, right? So it's only about reporting the facts. It's not about making a decision.
So I would imagine that you and Tyler and probably your deputy have all gone through some sort of training. Can you talk briefly about that?
Yeah, and actually I'm going to add in the next phase after this is also the decision-making process and hearings officers. And for students, that's Andrew, our Dean of Student Engagement, and for employees, that's Laura, as our Vice President of People and Technology. And we're all required to undergo training annually on 2 different fronts. One is just the basic training, right? And that training this last summer, one of the main agencies that a lot of colleges in the West Coast work with, that was anywhere from an 8 to a 20-hour training. In addition to that, the state of Oregon requires that we go through a trauma-informed care approach training. And what we've been able to do this last year is work and coordinate those as a state. I coordinated it for all the community colleges for Oregon for the Title IX and sexual harassment training, and Lynn Benton is coordinating that for the trauma-informed care approach. Thank you. The other piece we talk a lot about with everybody involved is non-retaliation, and this applies to both parties. And over my time, the story I will always share, the stories I'll share with people and who I'm giving this bit of a lecture to is oftentimes you might have said something out of pure innocence and it was inappropriate. And so we're going to talk about that. And we're going to go through that process. And the outcomes from that could have been relatively minor, but that person engaged in retaliatory efforts towards the person who reported it, and they got themselves in a whole lot more hot water than if they just kept their mouth shut and let us go forward with a good investigation and an objective process, right? So we really hit home hard on the non-retaliation piece, and that does apply whether that's through social media, third party, or the persons themselves. And a few other things to note. We talked about the investigation report. That's given to then Andrew or Laura to determine if there appears to be a violation of one of our policies. And if so, they move forward to a formal hearing, and those processes vary differently between students versus what type of employee group you're part of. And we deploy the preponderance of evidence standard. So in our public legal system, it's guilty beyond a reasonable doubt, right? You've seen that on TV, well aware of it in the papers, that sort of thing. In higher education, this is grounded in case law around student conduct hearings, and has been around for decades, is a preponderance evidence standard, meaning it's more likely that it happened than it did not. And so that's the threshold that we use. We could have chosen to go to a higher threshold, but that kicks in a whole lot of other legal processes that honestly, we would have to hire an attorney with legal expertise in this field to adjudicate any one of our cases. Follow-up, this is a hard one for a lot of folks involved, especially our faculty and staff who are incredibly supportive of our students in reporting it. Legally, under federal privacy laws, we can't do any follow-up except for the people that were the reporting party and the responding party. So all we can say is, Erin, thank you for reporting it. We have to trust that we're going to follow up on this process, right? And that's hard for a lot of folks to hear. But I think over time, we've been able to demonstrate that we've been really effective in our hearings process and in our student conduct process and following through on these investigations. Any questions on any of that?
So when do you call 911? I mean, that should be somewhere in the tree, somewhere along the line.
That is purely as part of when I meet with the student. We also talk about all those local resources for support, and is purely up to the student or the person who's the recipient of the Title IX incident, if they would like to pursue that or not. That is not mandatory, and again, it's about giving that person that power back so that they're in charge of the situation where they might have lost that ability in charge. So it's part of the conversation.
So there's no mandatory reporting type stuff.
There's employees are required to report it to me or through our instant reporting system, but there's no mandatory reporting to law enforcement.
Unless someone's under 18, right?
Unless someone's under 18, and those are two different terminologies.
And that
right?
doesn't happen very often. for
Yeah,
us.
we do have a mandatory reporting policy for if we're made aware of or witness as someone under the age of 18 who's the victim of any of these situations. That's a mandatory reporting policy versus an obligation to report. That language makes difference. Resources for support. I've mentioned a lot of these, so I won't go over them again. The other piece that we always offer up to students is that we do have free acute care counseling. So I 5 free sessions for students through our mental health counselors that we have on campus. And for employees, we always share our employee assistance programs, our EA. And those are pretty common resources on a lot of college and universities. Locally, we also share information about Saving Grace and our National Domestic Violence Hotline. And those are the 2 primary resources that most colleges and universities, they'll have a local provider and then the National Domestic Violence Hotline that we share. And that really focuses mostly on the sexual harassment, sexual assault, dating violence, domestic violence, or stalking, which there's a shorter way to say all those, portion of things. So before I switch over to pregnancy-related conditions, any questions on that piece?
What happens if somebody goes through the hearings process and you find that what happened is true, and what's the ramifications for somebody of this behavior?
Yeah, if someone's found responsible, it really varies based on the incident. I mean, it could have been an offhand comment that was really inappropriate on up to something as a sexual assault and all gradations in between. So it really is custom to that situation, but in all cases, students and their employees are held accountable. There's not just one uniform response.
Sure. Students you could potentially not be allowed to come back as a student, or so education and but potentially not disciplinary, but significant.
What our general language is anything from, what's the first word, Andrew?
A warning.
Thank you. Anything from a warning on up to suspension.
Okay.
COCC's policy actually to expel a student actually has to come to the board of directors for approval. And in my 30 years of college, we've never expelled a student that I've known.
Can you tell us just a little bit about the scope of how often this happens?
Yeah, great question. It varies tremendously, 1 to 5 times a year. It's not significant. Sadly, a couple of years ago, we had several incidents and they were all false reports. So to say it's 5 times, it might be, and 5 times, not everybody's always found responsible either. So.
May I chime in? I think you'll agree. They can be extremely time consuming. They're very work intensive.
Yes. And it is one of those where it's kind of a stop, drop and roll thing. It's one of the things I pride myself on in this college and this process on is for the people that are in Tyler's role, especially being as our investigators, is they need to be able to step away from their regular work really darn quickly. I will respond within 24 hours. And then Tyler will start his, and the other folks that we're training to be investigators will start their work within 24 hours of that. So that quick response time is something that frankly got a lot of college and universities earning well-deserved negative headlines. And why starting under Clinton and Obama and forward, a lot of the rules changed because people weren't, I would say, not doing the right thing and following through in a way that is professional, collegial, trauma-informed, and a caring approach. Right. So one of the changes that came about in an expanded capacity, there's always been protections in the state of Oregon for pregnancy status, but it was somewhat vague as to what that meant in a college and university setting. Under Biden's administration, one of the things they added was pregnancy or pregnancy-related conditions, and we'll talk about what that means. And so the definition for pregnancy or related conditions is pregnancy, childbirth, false pregnancy, termination of pregnancy, lactation, or recovery from any of these conditions. So when we say that broad umbrella pregnancy related conditions, it encapsulates all of these different areas.
I'm sorry, Alicia, what is false pregnancy?
Having great question. The way I was just going to describe it means it could have been a loss of pregnancy too. Yeah, anybody else want to? I just rolled with it. I've never been asked for more specific definition. Well, no, because it has to have there's a physiological act.
I want to say it's like Queen Mary. Remember, she had 2 of them. They called them pregnancies where like she grew a big stomach and everything, but she wasn't really
Yeah,
pregnant.
that's what I was trying to think of.
She had all of the symptoms, but didn't actually.
Rare condition where someone experiences the physical and emotional symptoms of pregnancy without being pregnant.
I was stumbling on, like, when you get a false negative on a test, but. So our responsibility as college under these expanded regulations, and I'm just gonna pull these all up here. Is if an employee is made aware that a student is pregnant or has any of the pregnancy related conditions, they're required to give that student my contact information. Now, the student does not have to follow through. The employee does not file an incident report. They just have to give my contact information. And so one of the things we've done to help with all of that is we created business cards that are in every classroom that have a QR code for students to scan, especially when you think about the volume of part-time faculty that we have, that resource is there for them. It's in our learning management system with Canvas. We're in the process of developing brochures to post all over campus. We'll have it in our new student orientation, all sorts of different ways to get that information in front of students on a regular basis. The reason they want to give my contact information is that student just needs help or support in any capacity. Other than that, students are asked to work then directly with their faculty members if they're pregnant or experiencing related conditions, if they need some sort of accommodation. And the regulations that came out gave a non-exhaustive list of potential accommodations from everything from needing a stool to sit on instead of a chair, or needing to give lactation breaks, or needing to give someone an opportunity to get up and walk around the room, up to if a student needs to stop out of a program, what can we do to reasonably accommodate that student's continuance once they're ready to return to COCC? And that's a new piece that our faculty have been flexible for years on this, but this is now a mandatory piece for the college. And then the other piece is just to ensure confidentiality. So if we as employees are told a student is pregnant or experiencing pregnancy-related conditions, we keep that confidential to ourselves. We don't say to the classroom, hey, guess what? Let's all give Erin a round of applause because she's pregnant, or whatever the case might be, right? Let's congratulate her. Sorry, Erin, right? You two somebody else is sitting front next. But yeah, so that confidentiality piece and ensuring that we all respect that student's privacy. And if you put it under vein of HIPAA, right, that's someone's medical condition, right? That's confidential information. bottom line, when it comes down to Title IX, sexual harassment, pregnancy-related conditions, whatever umbrella of all of this gender discrimination you want to look at this with, the biggest piece is that faculty and staff in our community know that there's resources here for people to support them. We take these situations seriously, we respond quickly, we've got lots of folks that they can take. So this is a twist on the training that we distribute to all students. It's a twist on the training we do for all employees, but you're seeing essentially about 90% of what our students are. Any questions that can help? Thanks so much.
Thank you, Alicia. So that brings us to financial aid update, and I think that's Tyler and Brianna.
Yes, I'm Brianna Sylvester. I'm the Director of Financial Aid here at COCC, and I'm going to apologize now. I'm nursing a cold, so I'm doing my best not to cough on you tonight. But thank you for letting me join you here. I wanted to give you a brief overview of what financial aid is, the different types of financial aid that are available to students, sort of how the process works, what it kind of looks like for our students. Then I also want to talk a little bit about some challenges that we faced over the last couple of years, and then end on some highlights and some things that we've done well. So we'll just dive right into some of this information, but please feel free to ask any questions along the way. So the first thing we want to talk about is just what is financial aid and what types of financial aid are available. So financial aid is funding to help with educational expenses. And I like to put the different sources into buckets. And so the first bucket I like to use is the gift aid. These are funds that students don't have to repay. And they kind of come in two categories, the grant aspect and then also the scholarships. With grants, there's a couple that you've probably heard of already, but for the federal government, there's the federal Pell Grant, which is the biggest grant program that we have. There's also a smaller grant program that's called the Supplemental Educational Opportunity Grant. And then our state also has a handful of resources as well. And so then we do have the Oregon Opportunity Grant, the Oregon Promise, and excuse me, the Oregon Opportunity Grant is kind of our version, state's version of the Pell Grant. And then the Oregon Promise Grant, which is an opportunity for students who are graduating from high school in the state of Oregon to go to a community college. And so that's a great opportunity that I know you've heard a little bit about as well. And then the state has also just recently in the last couple of years started the Oregon Tribal Student Grant that's been available to our students. So these are the grant funds. And then moving on to the scholarships, I know you know a lot about our COCC Foundation and the amazing work that they do. But we have our COCC Foundation Scholarship, which offers a lot of assistance to our students. And so this is one of our main scholarship opportunities for our students. Fantastic. The other scholarship we have is called the COCC Merit Scholarship. And this one is specific to our in-district high school graduating seniors who want to come to COCC. And so this is another opportunity for them to get additional funding to help with those expenses. And then, of course, students can go to other areas to get those scholarships. So the Oregon Student Access and Completion, they have the Oregon, they kind of house the Oregon application for scholarships. But there's also national scholarships, employers, and other places that students can access scholarships. Yes.
So the merit versus the foundation, the merit is just for in-district high school students.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct, yes. And the merit really is specifically merit, so there's no component of need on that. The second then the bucket that we like to look at is our earned funds or that self-help aid. So this allows students to find a job on campus and it's called the Federal Work Study Program. And so what that does is the student actually earns money by working in a department. They get a regular paycheck like they would with any other part-time job. But it's a benefit because usually they're fairly flexible positions. And then, of course, the third bucket, which I know you've heard a lot about in the news, but it's the borrowed funds. Those are going to be those student loans that you hear about. But there's different types of those loans. So we've got the subsidized loan, which has no interest while the student is in school. We've got unsubsidized, which is going to have that interest building when they're in school. And then the parent of a dependent student can also apply for a Parent Plus loan to help with those expenses as well. So there are different amounts there. Students are not required to take these. When they apply for financial aid, we give them the option, let them know what they qualify for, but they actually get the option to accept it.
Brian, is work study minimum wage typically, or is there?
It is. So here at COCC, our positions are at minimum wage. So then what we want to talk about is now that we have funds, how does financial aid work? And we have a basic equation for financial aid. We start with the cost of attendance. In the cost of attendance, we can have two categories of costs that build that cost of attendance. So we have what I like to call the direct costs. So there's going to be those costs associated with getting into the classroom. So tuition, fees, books. Then you have the indirect costs. So those are going to be transportation, housing, personal expenses, things of that nature. So you kind of got those two components that we consider in putting together that budget of what does it cost for a student to go to school at COCC? Or then when the student applies for financial aid, they get a number called the Student Aid Index, and we'll talk about the application in a minute. But what this Student Aid Index is really just a number that helps us determine this family's ability to pay for higher education. So that's really what this is used for. Then we put together our equation. So you've got that cost of attendance, you take that Student Aid Index, and then you've got the need, the remaining need. So all those funds that we talked about, that's what we try to do, is we try to meet that need that that student is demonstrating to us. So how do students actually get access to these funds? And it's through basically a one online application process that starts the whole process for these students. And it's called the free application for federal student aid.
Which is a nightmare.
Which, well, hopefully I'm gonna have some good news for you.
Well, you have to do it every year your kid's in college.
It's getting better. Yes, yes, you know, it does have a bad reputation. It is getting better. And so we'll talk a little bit about
Except
that.
when the website crashes.
Oh, did that? Yeah, we'll talk about that. So, yeah, so this is the application of it. In the state of Oregon, it's how we apply for all of our federal funds, but also our state funds. Some of our state funds do have an additional application, but for the most part, this is how you start the process to get your federal and state funds. The other great thing that we have in Oregon is for students who are undocumented, even though they don't qualify for federal funds, they can complete the Oregon Student Aid application or the ORSA, and they can actually use that to apply for state funding. So those state funds that we talked about, also our foundation scholarship. So it does still give them access, hopefully, to some additional assistance that some states aren't able to offer. So what happened to the financial aid application? So there is a long history of the financial aid application being long, being exhaustive. And so in 2021, Congress passed the Future Act and passed the simplification. And in that process, what they did, FAFSA simplification means just that they're trying to simplify that FAFSA application. So it's not quite as cumbersome and it's hard to do. The Future Act was.
I've been doing it since 2020. It's not gotten any better. Anyway, I'm sorry. That's not on you at all.
Oh, I understand. So the Future Act, though, is part of what Congress passed that allows the Department of Education to actually access IRS and tax information on a contributor's behalf. And so what this does then, when you pair those two things together, is it supposedly simplifies the FAFSA application. Because one of the biggest hurdles that our students have experienced over the years is the intimidation of filling out the FAFSA and that tax information that can be very intimidating, confusing. So what this now Future Act allows us to do is get that information for them, so they don't have to.
Brianna, what about when a child or a student is a dependent, but the parents won't fill it out? We've got a couple kids in Cook County who've approached us, my husband, asking for help, like, because they can't get the information from the parents.
Right, so in general.
What do we do?
Yeah, so in general, it is required that the parents and contributors actually help them participate in filling out the FAFSA application. Because what the Department of Education is saying is that it's the family's ability to pay. With that said, there are a few things, doesn't always work for all students. But if it's a harmful situation for them to be in touch with their parent. And I do want to clarify too, that this is for our students who are considered dependent students, which means they're under the age of 12. So not all of our students have to actually get their correct information. But for those, if it's an abusive situation, harmful for them to be in touch with their parents, we can absolutely work with them. We have a process to actually go through to override that. The other options too, we've got students, as we know, who are under the suffering from homelessness or at risk of being homeless. And so there's also an opportunity then in that regard to then document that situation to allow them to go through the process without parental information. Final thing is that if the student doesn't fit under any of those qualifications, then the student can basically let us know in the FAFSA application that their parents are unwilling to participate, and we can access the unsubsidized loan. If you remember those funds, that was kind of one of the last options that we want for our students. So one of the things that we do, and I have done throughout my career in financial aid, is talk to contributors and parents about how important it is that they participate in this process, what it means, and some of the security around the process, so that sometimes it's that they don't really want to share this information with somebody they don't know. And so we have the opportunity to really show them and help them understand that this information is confidential. It's not even shared around campus. It's kept in our financial aid. So, great question. So with that said, we've done all of these things now to help work on simplifying the FAFSA. But you know, things that the government sometimes do, they bite out a little more they can choose sometimes. And so they not only try to rewrite the FAFSA application, rewrite the methodology behind that, but then also all of the platforms we use to communicate back and forth to the Department of Ed to get this information. They decided now was a great time to update all of those, which needed to happen. However, as you can assume, it didn't necessarily go well. And so there were a lot of hiccups this last year that we were working through with the Department of Education, with our students and with our families. And so there was absolutely some burden on our families that was unintentional, that really did cause some extra anxiety for our students that we, you know, even with the Department of Education, didn't always have answers. And so what I will assure you with now is that as we are launching out the 2025-26 financial aid application, the Department of Education has resolved a good majority of those issues. And so we're really pleased to see that. The other thing is that even if the issue isn't resolved, we at least know what the issue is and we know what the workaround is. And those are two things that then we're not in the dark with our students and saying, we just don't know. Now we actually have solutions that we can give our students. So yes, we had some hiccups, but I think that we are moving forward in a very positive direction.
You know, when we're talking about federal stuff, is there any indication of changes in the availability of funding for students in the next few years from the federal level?
So right now, and when they set their funding levels each year, right now, what we do know for the 25-26 years that the federal Pell Grant is going to remain flat. But every year they have these conversations, and every year those are conversations that they really address this, and as does our state. And so both of those, what we really like to see is what I kind of call stacking of aid. So what we really want to see is students not just getting one source of funding, but getting multiple sources. So that's what it really adds up. But every year they do revisit that.
There's no major indication we would see a cratering, for instance, of federal funding in the next few years for students.
Yeah, and so I guess what I'll say first, I caution myself in speaking for the federal government. However, typically speaking, and in my 20 years of this, I haven't seen a pullback of aid from the federal side. Not to say that they won't or they can't, but every single change in administration, you know, we go through this almost every 4 years with the change in administration, and then also that means changes in the Department of Education. So this isn't new to our industry, and right now I don't see any like red flags as far as
concerns initially. But again, I'm not gonna speak for the Department of Education, because we never know.
Yeah, may I add a little bit here? Our good colleague, Anne Marie Hamlin, took one for the team and read Project 2025 on education.
Just
And
the one chapter.
just
one
on
chapter.
education, just one chapter. And then she provided a report at the senior leadership team meeting. And one of the proposals, possibilities was a diminishment of federal student financial aid and Pell Grants. The other issue that came up was the possibility of privatizing financial aid and taking it out of the government. And the other was slipped out of my head. It wasn't good.
The removal of parent plus loans.
Removal of
Plus loans.
So certainly lots of things have been floated about that are ideas. I don't try to speak or anticipate the federal government either. I don't think those would be top of the priorities for the next administration. And my experience is, I am not an expert, as you are, is that legislators tend to really, they tend to support Pell quite in a bipartisan way. And I think what we've seen in recent years, at least in recent years, is a desire to expand Pell for short-term purposes like prison education and for short-term workforce training. And those are all good things. And again, Anne Marie, thank you for taking one for all of us. One of the things that the Project 2025 authors seem to be positively interested in is bolstering workforce education and training. Whether their ideas would do that or not, I can't say, but it is one aspect of education that tends to be treated more favorably.
And I would add to, a lot of things with financial aid, because we are very highly regulated. A lot of these things are in law, are in statute. So in order to change and address some of these things, it's not going to happen. And so there are going to be some processes in place too. That, of course, we're going to be keeping our eye on those. All right, so let's end on some good news. So, just some information about COCC. We have about 50% of our certificate and degree seeking students actually participate and receive some sort of financial assistance through our financial aid programs. This is pretty typical across community colleges and has been pretty steady in all the years I've been here at COCC. And so it is good to see that, we do have a lot of students engaging in this extra funding that's available to them. But of those 50%, we have 64% that receive a need-based grant, which means, these students do have some educational need. And so when you pop down to the next bullet of, we gave out over $8 million in need-based grants to these students. It's encouraging to see that we actually have some funding or we're able to assist these students access higher education.
Karina, is that from the foundation?
So the need-based grants, no. So these are going to be the federal, so that federal Pell Grant, the Oregon Opportunity Grant.
So we pay them? I thought they were paid to the student who then.
They are paid, so we're the middleman. So the
Okay.
money comes through us and then we give it out to the student.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're responsible.
Yes.
Another proposal that is part of, well, I'm sharing good news, that is part of Project 2025 is, and it's being discussed even amongst congressmen now, is requiring higher ed institutions, if their students default on loans, to be responsible and assume some of the risk for paying that back. which, again, we are not in pain.
And again, more is gonna need to be discussed, and I guarantee you, the financial aid community will have a lot to say, because we also have a lot of restrictions on what we can and can't do around student loans, and so we would certainly want to resolve some of those situations or something like that to come into play. Yes. So, in addition to then those need-based grants, we've also paid out almost $4 million in that Oregon promise. So this is going to be, again, for those students who are now accessing community college, which is, you know, the affordable option for beginning their college education. What's also great about the Oregon promise is that I've heard from the state is that applications and transitions into the Oregon promise have increased over the last 4 years, and actually is at the highest rate the state has seen since the onset of the program. So we're excited to see that, and I'm seeing that the trend here at COCC is matching that same in trend, so we're excited to see that. And then finally, we paid almost $21 million. So again, this is a way that we are able to help students access their education through these funds. So we're excited to see that the work we do, and when we see those numbers, when we talk to those students at our front counter, it really does make us proud and excited to see what these students then are doing. So,
Karina, can I ask a question? What amount of that came from the foundation?
so of that, so they had $2 million to award, I think about 101.5 million probably is what was paid out in 2020.
Yeah, 2.1 offered, 1.6 paid out.
Yeah, 1.6.
Thank you.
I had a question.
Yes.
So I'm just thinking of Congress again and how they're looking at Pell and those kind of things. They really need data. Is there data that we or the Oregon Community College put together to help them know what they do for it?
Absolutely. So part of financial aid in particular is we are very highly regulated. So not only do we pull in information, but we also send back information on a regular basis all the time. And so that they have access to that information that they can make some of those decisions on. The other piece is, again, part of some things that will go through what they call negotiated rulemaking. So if they're going to be making some changes with some things, they have to actually present it out to us as a financial aid community and the public in general for comment before they actually go through the process of moving forward with a particular proposal. Yeah. Does that help?
It kind of does, and but what I heard you say was that the congressman, let's say, needs to find the information themselves as opposed to be handed it to them, which works better in my.
Right. And I think it depends on the instance, because it does also depend on what the topics are. The information though, it is actually available through the federal sites that the Department of Education, as well as the state of Oregon, have put together. So that information is available. There's also some level of confidentiality, so they kind of do have to go through those portals versus contacting schools directly, because we all report to those portals. Is that?
Can I add too? Is it NASPA?
Yes.
Surely your organization has a lobbyist.
Oh, yes.
Probably more than one. So you have all kinds of national organizations, AACC, ACCT, who lobby heavily around federal student financial aid. So they're sharing all kinds of information out to help our legislators understand.
Yes, and the National Association of Student Financial Aid Administrators, the NASFA, they sit in front of Congress sometimes regularly, especially this last year. So, yeah, we do absolutely have a voice.
How long does it take, when you have a phone call from a student and that you start working through the process? How much time? Well, how much does it take and how much of your time does?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, and it's my favorite response. It depends. So it really does vary student by student. There are some students who kind of fit into that little box that and they can, you tell them, here's the process, here's the next step. They go out, they fill out the FAFSA application, We get that in the next week, we give them a financial aid offer and they're ready to go. And then there's other students who maybe have a little bit more challenge with completing that FAFSA application, maybe need some additional help or assistance in doing that. Maybe have some contributors that don't have access to electronic abilities, things like that. So then that can take a little bit more time. If we then get that response file back from the Department of Ed and they say, hey, we need to go look into these particular parts of the application. Now we need to go back and ask for some additional information from the student. And we kind of do this dance, a little bit of this, I call it a tennis game, where, you know, they do a little bit of something, then we do a little bit of something, and we just kind of serve it back. In that process, it really depends on how responsive the students are, and also if they have access to the information we're looking for. And so we'll work with them, and in some cases, we can resolve it within a week. And in other cases, it can drag on. So typically we say we have the information, we try to have it processed within about 4 weeks. Again, there's always those situations where you might have to do a little bit more. We do have a lot of opportunities for students to get help with us. One, our office hours, which we are always available for walk-in, phone call and email. We also have what we call our Fund Your Future Fridays. And so students can actually come into a computer lab with a financial aid administrator and get assistance completing the FAFSA or the ORSA, applying for a scholarship, learning how to navigate the Bobcat account. And so we do offer some of those services to help with that too. So yeah, it can take a little time, and sometimes it can just go right on through, and the student could apply today and have their money by the tuition due then next Friday.
Brianna, I just wanted to say, I have a sophomore here at COCC, and so all of the new college, orientations and FAFSA and all of this experience, gotten to experience firsthand. And our student had a few hiccups in his FAFSA process, and their department reached out proactively to check in with him to make sure things were going okay. And it was a huge relief to have the support of your team just through some things that were super complicated for us to understand. So I was super impressed with all of your staff.
Thank you so much for sharing that. We do have an absolutely phenomenal team here in our financial aid department, and I couldn't be more proud to work with.
Lots of
Also,
slow
I'm gonna give Brianna a little
explanation.
bit of credit too, because at a statewide level, she's actively engaged in the statewide board of administrators, student financial aid. I think you're currently one of their vice presidents. And last year you led a training, sorry, I'm using my voice too. Last year you led a training for 400 high school counselors across the state, 300, a huge number, and was able to help them digest all this information in a way that they also then become a resource for our students. So I want to thank Brianna for her leadership on the statewide level too.
And while we're adding some comments, I want to say that, Title IX and financial aid can be, not only are they just tricky in terms of administration and compliance, but they're often pretty fraught for people. I'm just always impressed by Brianna's office, Tyler and Alicia and their staff that deal with Title IX, at the professionalism, the ability to, manage pressure and be clear and be thorough and keep doing the work when it can be hours and hours and hours is so impressive.
And still be compassionate.
And still be compassionate. And as the last FAFSA kerfluffle was happening, my colleagues across the state were all in a panic, like, what's happening at your school? And they were very worried about enrollment and all these things, which is reasonable. But I kept thinking, why am I not hearing anything about this? Things seem to be okay. And I know I would if there were problems. And so I'm not, I know you folks were struggling, but you were also, let's be honest, ahead of the game and solving some of the problems and working through them. So I was just really, really impressed.
Thank you. And it is, when you say it's a team effort, I know you hear this, but with COCC, we are a team here. We use, our IT department has been a huge support for us in implementing changes and making those things go smoothly. for us. We do offer, again, those assistant programs and those opportunities for our students to engage. And so I appreciate that. And it really does take all of us to make this work. And we've got an amazing team.
Okay, last one, we get a lot of credit for giving out 2 million in scholarships or 2.2, if we don't do it without. It doesn't matter. Doesn't-
Noted. Thank you very much, Brianna. Any other questions or comments for Brianna?
Good job.
Good
Thanks.
job.
Glad we have.
So our next item is the Season of Nonviolence, and I know it's not a presentation, but I would love to ask if you guys wouldn't mind, Charlotte and Christy, just give us an overview, because I think it's a really cool thing that we do.
Sure.
Well, just maybe some highlights, the thing you're most excited about, or something like that. Would you mind doing that?
Let me take my coat off.
I'm sorry, I should have given you a heads up.
No, I mean, it's exciting for you to ask because we are really excited about the programming. It's the 17th year of Season of Nonviolence. That means a lot, right? And our programming just keeps getting bigger and bigger in our collaborations. I don't know if you all know this, but we partner with Cascades Academy. We are actually one of our events that I'm extremely excited about is our keynote event. Our keynote speaker is Reverend Naomi Tutu. And we're having a student event, and Cascade Academy students are actually coming to spend time with her in an informal way. And also COCC and OSU Cascade students are invited to that as well. And it's just a really special opportunity. And so we're just really grateful for that partnership and to all of the sponsors that help us do this, because we could not do it without our sponsors. There's just no way. And as we start to gear up for, we're getting close to our 20th celebration. And so it'll be exciting to see what we cook up.
Yeah, it's amazing, not only staff and students, but also just the entire Central Oregon community that have almost come to quote unquote, expect this incredible programming every winter and look forward to it. And clearly, the minute we announce it, it gets to capacity. And I think it's just such an important and inspiring
Yeah, there's just a lot of collaborations, a lot of, so obviously we're really excited about the keynote, like Reverend Naomi Tutu, that she's been someone we've wanted to come for a long time. And during the summer, so we start planning for this in the summer, because it takes quite a bit of work. Charlotte and I had met and trying to think about themes for this year and knowing just how decisive the world is right now. And we really wanted to center it on belonging. And so that was really what just captured our interest and really the general need in our populations, and to try to yes, we want to address the issues that we are facing, but we also want to celebrate that we are a community, that we can celebrate our differences, that we can come together and unite. And so that was just, it felt so poignant to have Reverend Naomi Tutu for this year's celebration.
really be a little more inspirational than some messaging could be, right? We need a little come together as humanity, we were thinking.
Yeah, a little love and
Yeah. So we have that, and we announced that to all of you, the COCC community, about 5 or 6 days prior to the community. And then once we announced it to the community, it was at capacity in a couple of days. If you still want to come and attend in person, there is a wait list at the tower. And it's not that huge, and we'll be sending out an email next week to everyone who registered. So we just have, especially with free events and people booking so far ahead, there will be cancellations and there will be no shows. So I think there's 13 people on the list now, so it's not insurmountable to get there. And then we are offering a recording that if you register for that, you get it a few days after, and you can watch it at your leisure. And then the rest of our programming is really yet to kind of be announced. We sent out a press release and posters are being distributed, but we haven't done a big push, but it still fits under our belonging umbrella. And there's some exciting ones. I don't know if we want to highlight them all, or I know what you want to do, Christy.
I do want to give a special shout out. That we have a couple of colleagues here at COCC that are part of the Bed Contemporary Dance Company. 2 faculty members, Jessica Hammerman and Stephanie Andre. who, last year for the first time, we kind of stepped outside of our box and they curated a dance for us. And so we asked them to do it again this year. And I have to say, and I said this earlier today, to me, that event last year was one of the most moving things I have ever seen. And it just was incredible. I get emotional talking about it. And so they're doing another one with us this year, which is just really exciting.
And our theme, which is really.
Yeah,
And just a reminder, for our board, Stephanie served on our presidential search advisory committee.
yes, and so it's just really special to have that collaboration with faculty here at COCC, bringing in this beautiful art that we can celebrate. And we're also partnering with Barber Library right now. Currently, actually, there is an art exhibit right now, which is incredible. You should go check it out. But the artist is going to be actually doing a talk for us within Season of Nonviolence. So there's all these just beautiful cross collaborations happening, which I feel like this year it's even more than in the past. And we've done a good job with that in the past, and this year it's even more. And then just highlighting also that Season of Nonviolence also happens upon Black History Month. And so Marcus LeGrand has put together a really exceptional lineup for the programming that he's done. They're including a special program in Redmond. And so we really hope and encourage you to come to as much as you possibly can. We do understand that we're all really busy, but we would love to see college leadership there and to support these events and also to experience something amazing.
Yeah, well, we always say it's a community collaboration, and that is from the incredible generous sponsors that we have, but also just with the local organizations that help cross promote it or involve their members. So it really feels good. The collaboration part of it feels really good.
And then I guess the last one to highlight is the community book discussions that we do annually. Which is Belonging Without Othering, How We Save Ourselves and the World. And this is the newest book by John A. Powell, and Stephen Menendian. But John A. Powell was actually one of the keynote speakers here for Season of Nonviolence several years ago. So it's just, again, just full circle.
Thank you both. It's, I really love hearing it, but I think we especially appreciate it because, as you all know, community outreach is one of the important goals that we have set, and you guys are really critical. And you and everybody that's working on this is a really critical piece of that. Thank you. And I was so impressed. I had attended some events before the pandemic, and then you guys just kind of, or the college, I guess, everyone just kind of pivoted and, made some of that programming available online, through via Zoom and such. And I just thought that was an incredible thing and a great opportunity for the folks in the community as well as on campus. So thank you for great work.
You're welcome. Any other questions or?
Thank you. Okay, so we now move to mileage and meal per diem rates. Michael.
Evening. So in front of you tonight is a resolution to adopt the current mileage and per diem rate that have been issued by the federal government. According to Business Procedure B-2-6.1, annually the board approves these rates. The IRS issues the mileage rate, and the U.S. General Service Administration issues the per diem rates. So we have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, in in-state rates and out-of-state rates. And for the mileage, it went from 0.67 a mile to 0.70 per mile.
Hey.
Any question?
Okay, we need a motion to approve this resolution.
Be it resolved that the Central Oregon Community College Board of Directors hereby approve the proposed mileage and meal per diem rates presented in section A.
I'll second it.
Great, thank you both. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Noting none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please indicate by saying no. Noting none, motion carries unanimously. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
All right, that moves us to Board of Directors operations, and we will start with our committee updates. And the first is the Advocacy Committee.
Well, we have begun, one of our objectives for the year, which is to connect with many of the newly elected leaders around the region. We thank Kyle, and Lori for taking the lead on scheduling these meetings. But Erin and Laura and I have divided up, all of the folks who were elected this fall, and Lori and one of us will be chatting with each one of them just to advocate broadly for OCCA's priorities at the state level. And then to talk a little bit about the highlights, what's happening at COCC and our gratitude for their ongoing support of community colleges. And Lori and I had a great chat this week with Alex and Nicole from Senator Wyden's office, talking a little bit about some of what we might be able to expect at a federal level, around the variety of things. And one of the things that was wonderful that came out of that conversation is they have a caseworker within Wyden's office who's ready to work with DACA youth. If there are any of those of you at COCC, there is a pathway for them to come forward and to be connected with Wyden's office to receive support, case management support around some of their issues. We also talked about just a variety of other ways that we can stay connected, and they're were wonderful in following up with us already on a few of those things. So just great connections to have. And then we are talking about the OCCA priorities here tonight. And we'll also be getting ready to gear up with Lucas's support to actually engage in the session around some key legislative questions. So.
And just a warning that I'm gonna ask you and Erin to take the lead on this when we get to
No
it.
problem.
So you now have a heads up.
Yes.
Okay.
I think we've probably read it, or no, we've read it.
Yeah.
We know these at this point.
Yeah.
But they're, yeah, we can talk through it if you want.
Okay.
Yep.
Erin, anything you want to update us on the serving on as our liaison to the ACCA board, besides this, which will be?
Yeah, only that the weekly legislative calls start next week, and so Lucas participates in those, and
I'm
we
gonna
want to have
join
some
them.
advocacy committee participation
I do as well.
as well, and Lori as well, so, but that's it.
Thank you. So that moves us to the OCCA legislative priorities. And I think we have been asked to sign on and endorsing them. And so I will let Erin and Erin, please, if you guys don't mind, just kind of giving the highlights.
Well, Lori gave some of the highlights already.
Yeah.
So I don't know if we need to talk through these, or if there's questions we can try
Yeah,
to
anybody has
answer.
questions? Maybe that's a better way to do it.
There's 6 priorities here on this that
Yeah.
are essentially, and you can kind of see them there. Would you all like us to review them one more time, just so they're on your minds?
I'm fine.
I mean,
presenting.
Lori went through them and I read them, but I didn't know if there's anything you wanted to highlight, or if does anyone have questions or concerns? Okay, well, would someone like to make a motion?
Make a motion for also the shortened version of the be it resolved here. The COCC Board of Directors supports the Oregon Community College Association Board's legislative priorities for the 2025 legislative session as listed here in our packet.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? Noting none, all those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please indicate by saying no. Noting none, motion carries unanimously. Thank you, both of you, and thank you, Lori, for the summary you gave us earlier on that. So we now have the presidential search committee update, or the presidential search update, and I think that everyone kind of knows where we are. You may recall that we accepted the 3 finalists recommendation that came from the search committee. And they all look like phenomenal candidates. Zach's been talking with them and said there seems to be unanimous enthusiasm, so it's happy to know about that. And Zach did the very unenviable process of herding cats to try to figure out how to get all 3 of the candidates here for 2 days where they could meet with the same groups for the same amount of time and go to all of the campuses. And he did it and.
Good job.
With help, thank you, especially Courtney and Kyle, so thank you.
Yeah, so thank you, Courtney and Kyle especially. So we have those set. You guys should have gotten an email notice. We'll make sure it goes out again. To remind everybody that we will be here to interview each of the three candidates for an hour and a half. And we will be then going to dinner with each of the candidates one of the 2 evenings. We had asked for questions that you guys would like to have on the slate of questions for the candidates, and I've only received a list of questions from Aaron and me. So we need some questions from other people, or Aaron and I are going to be writing all the questions.
I'll write some work.
Okay, we want everybody to get their preference in, so please send those. If you could get those to Zach and Erica and me by this Friday, we would be very appreciative, okay? So that we can have some really good questions in. And maybe what we'll do is, I think we still have the questions from the last time we did it. Obviously, our strategic plan is different and our board goals have evolved and such, but that might be a helpful reference tool for everybody to look at. If we'll send that out as just a reference to get the creative juices flowing.
Great idea.
Okay, thank you. And then we go to board member activities. May we start with you, Erica, online?
Yeah. Okay. So on December
One second,
1
13th.
second, we can't hear you just yet.
Uh-oh.
Right now, oh,
Go ahead.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, great. So December 13th, we had the presidential search committee meeting. On December 16th, we had another presidential search committee meeting. On the 16th, we also had the special board meeting. On the 20th, I had a check-in with Lori and Laura. And then on the 23rd, Laura and I got drinks. Thank you.
Okay, go. I was trying to figure out how to spin it and I couldn't.
On December 16th, with a special board meeting as well. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Erin?
Had the Oregon OCCA Student Success Committee meeting on December 12th. We had our special board meeting on the 16th. I attended public meeting law training on the 18th, riveting stuff. We had our advocacy committee meeting on the 20th, and that's about it. Is that a short month? Yeah.
Awesome. Erin?
Sure. Monday, December 16th, I attended the special board meeting. On Friday, December 20th, I attended the advocacy committee meeting, and I just want to offer a quick update on the Kai's Trust. I mentioned at the last meeting that we had met, but we're still kind of confirming where to allocate those funds. So that has been confirmed. $54,000 is going toward nursing pumps, $47,000 is going toward a campus services utility vehicle, and $6,000 is going to de-icer for that vehicle.
What was the first item?
Nursing pumps.
infusion pumps.
Oh, infusion.
Infusion, nursing infusion pumps.
Like
Thank
for
you.
the nursing program?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Alan?
Welcome.
I attended the 16th special board meeting. All I have.
Thank you. Jim?
Same, I can, yeah.
I do want to say it's pretty phenomenal. We called that meeting on short notice and everybody made it, so thank you. Okay, so I had the search committee on 13th of December. I had a call with Erica and Zach on the 13th. I had a call with Alicia on the 13th. I had a search committee meeting on the 16th, a special board meeting on the 16th. Then one of our regular check-ins with Lori and Erica on the 20th, the advocacy committee meeting on the 20th, and then on the 23rd, I checked in with Lori and Erica. It just happened to be at McMenamins.
And I feel like I should just remind everyone that I'm always happy to meet with any of you.
For
At
drinks or
McMenamins or
otherwise.
elsewhere. It's all good.
All right, that moves us to you for the president's report.
Just note 3 quick things. Winter term enrollment is still looking good. As of last Monday, compared to exactly 1 year ago, our full-time equivalent enrollment was up 1.7%. and our head count was up 6.8%. Again, that's gonna fluctuate, but you know, it's where the trend is right. Wanted to note that, you know, we talk a lot about workforce development here, and that's appropriate. But we still are in the transfer business and doing really good work with all of our faculty in those areas. And want to note that on Monday, January 21st, we have a large group of transfer institutions who come to our Coates Campus Center for several hours and meet with students who want to discuss what it would entail to attend there. So that's our Oregon Transfer Day. And then finally today, I want to thank Laura Bomey for putting together for the leadership team and for her team an exercise, a tabletop exercise that allowed us to hone our planning for any possible cybersecurity breaches. And I thought it was incredibly interesting and engaging. I think we've got some good ideas to focus on. And as you know, when we talk about cybersecurity, we don't get deep down in the weeds, not that I could anyway, but I just wanted you to know that happened. And in particular, because I know that Alan, you've asked about it before in the past. And so I'll assure you that we're doing everything we know about and within our power to make sure that we're well protected. And that's my report.
Thank you.
Thank you. Before we do the dates, which I'll do just really quickly, I do just want to remind the board members that if you ever have an item that you'd like to see on a future agenda, something that you'd like us to make sure that we, you know, or that you'd like to hear a little bit more about, have an update or something, please let Erica or me or Lori know. I know that Erin has done so a couple of times, and that's how we've gotten a couple of our really great presentations. Not that they're not all great, but anyway, if there's something that you like wondered about or heard in passing and wanted to know, just let us know. So I think the dates are generally self-explanatory. So I'll just remind everybody that our next board meeting is on February 12th, right here. And I think that then, unless there's anything else for our general session. No, okay, then the COCC Board of Directors will now meet in executive session for the purpose of ORS 192-660, Section 2, subsection D, labor negotiations. Representatives of the news media and designated staff shall be allowed to attend the executive session. All other members of the audience are asked to leave the room. Representatives of the news media are specifically directed not to report on any of the deliberations during the executive session, except to state the general subject of the session is previously announced. At the end of the executive session, we will return to open session and welcome the audience back into the board.
And SLT, please stay. That's okay.
Yes,
Much to
I think that's fine with us.